We're live.
Good evening, everyone. I'd like to call the December 9th, 2024 meeting of the University City Council to order. Madam Clerk, would you please call the roll?
Councilmember Clay,
Present.
Councilmember Teeman,
Present.
Councilmember McMahon,
Here.
Councilmember Hales,
Here.
Councilmember Fuller,
Here.
Councilmember Sutherson.
Here.
Mayor Crowe.
Here. Thank you very much. Before you have the agenda for tonight's meeting, are there any changes to the meeting for this evening? Mr. Rose.
Mayor and council members, I would recommend moving item number K4 to the city manager's report.
Okay, the city manager's asked to move item number K4 from the consent agenda to the city manager's report. Any other changes from members of council? Hearing none, all those in favor of approving the agenda as amended, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it. We have no proclamations this evening. You have minutes before you, November 25th, 2024, the Third Ward Housing and Revitalization Plan. Is there a motion to approve? Motion made by Mr. McMahon. Is there a second? Seconded by Mr. Fuller. Is there a discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it. You have before you the November 25th, 2024 regular minutes. Is there a motion to approve? Motion made by Mr. Teeman, seconded by Mr. McMahon. Is there discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it. Mr. Fuller.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I would like to appoint Susan Plasmeyer or nominate her for appointment to the Solid Waste and Recycling Task Force.
Thank you. Is there a second? Seconded by Mr. Smotherson. Is there discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it. Please note that John Soledar was sworn into the Park Commission on December 4th, 2024 in the clerk's office. This is our first opportunity for citizens' participation. For those of you who may not have been here before, there are sign-up sheets over by the door. If you'd like to speak either on an agenda item or a non-agenda item, you need to fill out a form over by the entry and then place it in the bin in front of the city clerk. Madam Clerk, are there any requests to speak?
There are none.
Thank you very much. We'll move forward now to council comments. Are there any council comments at this juncture? Hearing none, we'll move. There are no public hearings. Tonight we have items number K1, 2, 3, 5, and 6 on the consent agenda. Is there a motion to approve the consent agenda? Motion made by Mr. Smotherson, seconded by Mr. Clay. Is there a discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it. Mr. Rose.
Honorable Mayor and council members, this first item asks for approval to contract with Omni Tree Services for the removal of several trees off of Pershing and Ferguson, 59 trees from Pershing and 18 from Ferguson. I would ask for interim Public Works Director Mirella Kalic to provide a brief overview of this project. Mirella?
Can you hit the button, please, at the bottom? Thank you.
Good evening, Mayor. Good evening, council members and Mr. Rose. The Pershing and the Ferguson projects are scheduled to be completed in 2025, and initial applications have been completed around 2021. At the time, the tree removal wasn't included on the application. Before the Cochrane was hired to pick up these projects, the tree removal were identified as necessary to complete the construction of the street and the sidewalk projects. We have met several times with the Cochran, the consultant, and the city arborist to determine how many trees needed or were in conflict with the street project and the sidewalk project. Initially, the tree lease from the consultant was shorter than what the city arborist has assessed to be removed. And the simple reason was that the consultant didn't consider the removal of the trees based on was just a visual inspection and not based on the conflicts with the utilities and what may be the consequences is if we leave these trees in place, they will simply cut the roots around the sidewalk and remove the old sidewalk and will install a new sidewalk. But the trees that have been damaged by cutting the roots around the sidewalk may cause the hazards later on or can cause the death of the trees like later on. So it's a matter of delaying the tree removal if we would leave the trees now and plan to remove those later on. Another limitation to this is that ADA compliance doesn't require or doesn't allow us to curve around the trees to be able to narrow the width of the sidewalks around the trees. I have printed some pictures from the existing trees that may give you a visual interpretation how may have caused and if you will leave them in place or don't remove them prior to the construction. So being that very narrow strip between the sidewalk and the curb of the street, first is going to be a conflict with utilities because more they grow, they will cause damages to utilities. And the fact that the right-of-way line is very close to the sidewalk. So there is not a chance that we can offset the sidewalk in the way that we can gain more space to offset this location. The construction schedule, we have discussed all the options possible to save those trees, to be able to, to join the benefits of the trees, but limited to the resources we have as far as how much we are allowed to, like we have the timeline for the project schedule. So it's scheduled to be, construction's schedule is beginning of January 2025. And if we needed to delay the removal of the trees, which by environmental requirements and the endangered species should be removed from November 1st to March 1st. So it's environmental requirements for the timeline for the removal of these trees. So we have to somehow balance the timeline and between the cost and the timeline we have to select. So this way we avoid any delays on the project. So we may end up losing these grants and they pick up the project schedule.
Marilla, I believe there were also some questions regarding the replacement of the trees and the outreach that would occur for the removal process as well as the tree replacement. I would ask Parks and Recreation and Public Maintenance Area Director Darren Girdler to respond to what's going to be the process for removing and replacing the trees.
Thank you, sir. Mayor, City Council. Yes, we will, I believe the contract calls for the trees to be removed immediately. And, we will do a replacement program in the spring. We'll have to bid, there's so many trees, we'll have to bid it out. But we will have our, city forester choose the, proper species and diameter of the replacement trees. And we'll go from there.
We'd be happy to respond to any questions that, Mayor, you or the council has.
Yeah, I guess my first question would be, in my case, 59 trees on Pershing Avenue is an awful lot of trees to come down. And having lived at 6828 Pershing, I realize how much everybody enjoys the trees. I'm trying to figure out if you're supposed to start this in January and you're coming to cut down a tree in front of my house, have you talked to me yet? Or have you talked to my neighbors? Because speaking just for Pershing, I can talk about Ferguson too, but on Pershing Avenue, if somebody's coming in and cutting down a tree and you haven't talked to the neighbors on that street, I think we're going to have a very rude awakening. Not that this doesn't need to be done. We all get that it needs to be done, but this has got to be communication, communication, and communication, because I think otherwise we are going to have a maelstrom of opposition to what is a good idea and a great program. So I guess my major concern is if we're sitting here on December the 9th and we're going to start removing trees in January, I would hope we've already started talking to these folks.
Yeah, we, as soon we get approved from the council for the removal of the trees, we are going to put on the website the process and notify the public for the tree removal.
Okay, but no offense to anybody here, but putting it on the website does not cut it for me. This has to be some form of outreach to individual homeowners who are going to have their 100-year-old tree or 70-year-old tree, which is technically not theirs, but we all have ownership of it. The website doesn't cut it for me. No offense to anyone. It's just that there's got to be an aggressive communication plan. And I'm assuming that Mr. Clay is agreeing with me on Ferguson as well, that I would hate for a good idea to run afoul because we did not take the simple courtesy of contacting people that your trees are going to change.
When does the tree removal actually occur? I didn't believe that it started in January. I thought two things. One is that it was starting later. Secondly, we'd have a very comprehensive communication plan that we would roll out. So can you speak to that a little bit?
Yeah, I would suggest we mail to the affected residents a letter that to outline the need for the tree removal and how the construction of the street and sidewalk needs to be considered in the removal of the trees to be able to successfully complete the project on time. I assume maybe 2 weeks prior to, or maybe more, it's allowable time for us to mail to the affected residents. Is considered enough time prior to the.
Honorable Mayor and council members, we will at a minimum provide letters, but we'll also provide door hangers and give residents the opportunity to speak with staff should they have questions regarding the removal of their trees. In addition to that, the process of removing the trees will not occur until that communication has happened.
I mean, I do think, and I'll get you guys, I do think my colleagues, we're probably all supportive of what needs to be done, but I think we all want a little, we want to make sure that if we approve this thing, it's approved with the timeline that everyone's getting a notice and everybody has, I assume everybody has a chance to say, this is why we don't want this to come down. And I don't know how that process is even going to work. But, you know, I think this impacts an awful lot of people. And I apologize for taking this much time right off the bat. Usually I let you guys speak first, but this one kind of caught me off guard a little bit. Councilmember Clay was first.
Yep. Thank you, Mayor Crowe. I would echo the communication strategy. I can't certainly speak for everybody on Ferguson. It may be less about the tree coming down. It's just if someone's they may actually be supportive of the tree coming down, but if someone just shows up and starts cutting a tree down and they didn't know about it, I think that could be surprising to folks. So I won't say any more other than echoing the need for a communication plan, and what city manager has articulated with the door hangers in particular, I think is an excellent idea.
And before I finalize the draft letter, I will consult with the city attorney to outline if the residents have any questions and how will affect their property, they can call us or contact us with any questions. So we can go out there or and meet with them and provide the information they need. Why not some plans that show the sidewalk project in front of their house or the side of their house, maybe 1 week or 2 weeks until to the end of January, something like that. They can provide us with the feedback.
Mr. Teeman.
Honorable Mayor, my fellow council members, I hope also when we communicate to these folks that the removal and replacement be dealt with as juxtaposed, as in a certain sense, a conjoined action. Because this has, real impact as far as a green practice goes. That these should not only simply be removed, obviously, I defer to your judgment on this, but also that there is some kind of replacement done, and that the people understand that they will be getting a replacement tree, shall we say. Thank you.
We'll make sure to add to the letter.
Mr. Fuller.
Mr. Mayor, Honorable Mayor, ditto. And I'm just gonna, as one of these people that's been here for a while, if without communication, I'm just gonna remind you all of the scene we had when we widened Big Ben and we had people chained to the trees in front. I don't want that to happen. The other minor point in this communication, slip in there somewhere, we were designated, and this has been discussed in the urban forestry, which I'm the liaison to, that we are a tree city. And that's some sort of designation. And the urban forestry is going to do a presentation to us in sometime probably around March about the business of canopy cover. And we talked about this whole project. So I think the replacement tree is a real big issue in that communication. Thanks. Thank you.
Oh, yes, thank you. Keep in mind, the tree replacement won't probably be until the fall when the best time to plant the trees, but we'll spell that out in our letter and we'll make sure we follow through with it. Thank you.
Okay, Jim.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you for the presentation and clarifying that this really is a need as part of that project. And so that the constituents over on I know on Pershing have for years now been asking, when is Pershing going to be fixed? So as part of that communication, I would, if I was drafting it, highlight that that's what's going on. That's why the trees, because they'll be happy to know that their road will be less bumpy when this is done. So I think that would be a real balancing act between the benefit of what they're going to be receiving versus the detriment when they're losing the trees that they had. And I wanted to make sure that urban forestry they're aware of this. They've talked about it, because I don't want to have a call from a commission saying, why didn't we know either? So that communication should make sure we're done. And I just wanted to, okay, good. I wanted to make sure.
Mr. Mulligan.
Thank you, Mayor, members of the council. Just to clarify the process here, the bid proposal provides that within 10 calendar days after being awarded the contract, the parties will execute the agreement. Then there's a notice to proceed, and then they have 90 days thereafter to complete this work. So if council approves this evening, next step, the contract signed, notice to proceed 90 days. So if council's contemplating any modifications, this would be the time to discuss that.
Well, I think council has discussed some modifications, at least as far as making sure the timing of the services does not occur until after communication has been made on, frankly, on more than one occasion, probably to the homeowners on Ferguson and on Pershing. So, Mr. Rose, do you want to, with the contract, you want to move forward with it as presented?
Mayor, yes.
And so you feel comfortable that we can work with the contractor to make sure that no services will be rendered until we've worked through the communication plan to a degree
do.
that's satisfactory to you?
Yes.
Okay. Any other comments from the two of you two? Anything?
No, sir. I'll work closely with interim director to create those communications and with the communications manager.
So you have before you an item for tree removal contract. Is there a motion to approve? Motion made by Mr. Teeman. Is there a second? Seconded by Mr. Clay. Is there discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Opposed? The ayes have it. Thank you very much. Mr. Rose.
Or Mayor, no updates for tonight. Item L2 is the first financial report, first quarter financial report, and I would ask for Finance Director Keith Cole to present this item. Mr. Cole?
Thank you, Mr. Rose. Honorable Mayor, members of council. I'll be presenting the first quarter of fiscal year 25 this evening. So the first funds, the general fund revenues, and we have a adjusted budget of 25,390,750. The year-to-date actual is 4,060,635. That represents 16% of the adjusted budget. This has a 1.276 million increase compared to the first quarter of fiscal year 24. And this basically comprises of the increases in gross receipts of roughly 101,990. And this is increased due to receiving more revenue in the electric and the water compared to what we received in the first quarter of 24. We also had an increase in service charges of roughly 216,930 in ambulance service charges. We had an increase in interest revenue of roughly 92,020 due to favorable market conditions in the first quarter. And then we also had an increase in other revenues of roughly 791,490. And this is mainly we received funds from the subtext development in issuance fees, some legal fees, and we had a payment from Seafood City for an outstanding bill. We also had an increase in inspection fees and permits of roughly 82,500. This was increase in building and zoning permits. Here, just the bulk of the property taxes that the city receives will be coming in during the months of December and January of 25. And overall, the revenues in the general fund, the percent of the budget had an increase of 64% compared to the same quarter of FY 24. This is just a pie chart of the revenues as a percentage as the year-to-date actuals. Breakdown by each category. And then we have the general fund expenditures. We have a adjusted budget of 30,568,371. The year-to-date actual is 7,305,970. This represents 23.9% of the adjusted budget. And we had an increase $673,083 compared to the first quarter of FY 24. So this, key points here is the increase in expenditures in the police department and the fire department. And it's roughly, this was due to how the pay period fall between the fiscal years in June and July compared to FY 24, and then what happened in FY 25. That's because in FY 25, the first week of July, we had pretty much a full pay period. And then the first pay period in July of 24, which is in July of 23, it just represented 1 day of payroll. It's just how the pay period fell. And also we had an increase in expenses in aquatics of roughly 117,700. This was mainly due to the increase in professional services of Midwest Pool Management, some electricity with the pool, and then water. And then we also had increase in expenditures in Centennial Commons of roughly 45,600. And this was increase in part-time salaries and a little increase in electricity. Overall, the expenditures as a percent of the budget increased by 2.8% compared to the same quarter of FY 24. And here on, again, this is the expenditure pie chart as a percentage of the year-to-date actuals. Just kind of give you a snapshot. And then the next fund I'll go over is the Economic Development Retail Sales Tax Fund. These are the revenues. The adjusted budget is 1,200,300. The year-to-date actual is 92,722. The actual is a percent of the budget, 7.7%. We had an increase of just a little slight increase of 2,452. And here on the sales tax revenue for the first quarter, I just had a slight increase, 2.7%. And then of the 92,722 actual sales tax revenue, roughly 52,340 or 56.4% is generated from the TIF. And per the TIF for the economic development, whatever revenue is generated from the TIF, 100% of it goes to the Economic Development Retail Sales Tax Fund. And sales tax here, the revenue is based on point of sale. And expenditures, we have an adjusted budget of 882,915. The year-to-date actual, it's 105,435. The percent of the actual adjusted budgets represents 5.7%. We had an increase 63,561. And this increase here in expenditures is mainly from facade improvement program and some professional services. The next fund is the capital improvement sales tax. The revenues here is the adjusted budget of 2,940,200. Year-to-date actual is 413,386. This represents 14.1% of the adjusted budget. And this had an increase of 155,758 compared to the first quarter of 24. Excuse me. The increase here, it's due to reimbursement on the Westgate Avenue project, and we had a refund excess cost share for Liberty to Repair of 54,110. And capital improvement sales tax revenue, it's pooled sales, and it's just based on per capita. The capital improvement sales tax expenditures, we had an adjusted budget, 2,417,198. Year-to-date actual is 136,850. This represents 5.7% of the adjusted budget. And we had a small decrease of 14,838 compared to the first quarter of 24. Most of the capital improvement projects. They haven't started thus far in the fiscal year, the big projects. So they'll be wrapping up come the third quarter of FY 25. The next fund is the park stormwater sales tax. The revenues here, the adjusted budget, it's $2,102,200. The year-to-date actual, it's $150,808. This represents 7.2% of the adjusted budget, and it's a slight decrease of $2,225. So the decrease is roughly 1.4% of what we received in the same quarter of FY 24. And for the parks, so of the $150,808 sales tax revenue, roughly $70,045 or 46.4% is generated from the TIF. And so this represents, once we meet the base amount, before we meet the base, everything goes into the parks, that portion. But once it meets the base, then it gets splits out 50-50. But this 70,000, it's all city's portion, city's revenue. And this revenue is based on point of sale. Park stormwater expenditures, the adjusted budget is $1,401,865. The year-to-date actual, it's $440,702. It's the adjusted budget of 31.4%, and we had an increase of $357,041. This increase in expenditures mainly from the cost to the Army Corps of Engineer for the OMCI Stormwater Reimbursement Detention Basin 4 project. And the next fund discusses the public safety sales tax. We have an adjusted budget of $2,400,200. Year-to-date actual is $191,560. This represents 8% of the adjusted budget. We had a small decrease of $20,874. Even though there's a small decrease, it's all within reason for the first quarter. The public safety sales tax expenditures, we have an adjusted budget of $75,314. We have a year-to-date actual, it's a negative $170,134. This is a negative actual of 225.9% and a decrease of $6,037. The reason why we have a negative expense balance is because there was a check that we paid, but we voided it. But we're still looking into the matter because I think it's an error. So that's with the void, it's thrown that expense line item out of whack. So, but we're looking into it to figure out if it is correct or if it's an error. And quickly, then the next fund that we'll discuss is the Fire Protection Service Sales Tax. And if you remember, for an FY 25's budget, we broke out this fund. In the past, it's always been combined with the general fund. But then this budget year, we broke it out to its separate fund. So there's an adjusted budget of $1,050,000. Year-to-date actual is $75,404. This represents 7.2% of the adjusted budget and just a slight decrease of $1,113 compared to the same quarter of FY 24. And then with Fire Protection Service, this also generates TIF revenue. So of the $75,404 tax revenue, roughly $35,020 or 46.4% is generated from the TIF. Again, on the fire, 35,000, it's all city's portion. And it's, once it meets the base, then it gets split 50-50. 50 goes to the TIF, and then 50 then goes to the city. And so that's kind of how that portion works. And then we haven't budgeted any operational expenditures for this fund for FY 25. And I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Mr. Cole, I believe the balance for this fund is transferred into general fund, so there will,
It is,
Never be.
right, it's not considered operational, but it is transferred into the general fund. It falls under that operating funding sources. Yep.
Are there questions of Mr. Cole? Mr. Clay?
Thank you, Mayor Crowe. And thank you, Director Cole, for your presentation. A couple of things. I was intrigued by the increase in inspection fees and permits. That seems significant, and perhaps it's not a significant number, that 82,000, 500 figure. Does that come from just one project, or are we seeing multiple projects kind of happening, and that's big and small, and that increase is leading towards more development?
That's correct, Councilman Clay. Yeah, it's a cumulative of multiple projects going on within the city.
Okay. That's encouraging. The second question I want to frame more as a scenario to you, Director Cole. So imagine you're at Schnucks in New City. You're testing the firmness of avocados, making guacamole. And someone walks up to you and says, Director Cole, we had all that stuff. We had Jeffrey Plaza at Olive and 170. And now we have Costco and all the things around that. How much more money are we getting now? Is the city getting now from the Costco thing than we had before Jeffrey Plaza? To a resident who does not sit and pore over these things, and you may not be fully prepared to answer that now, so I don't want to put you on the spot, but that's actually something that happened to me. And so how would you answer that question?
That I would have to dig into the revenues that's generated from Costco, which there's a way, but it's kind of difficult on how it gets broken out.
I know the pool and
Right.
there's a number of things, but I think for our residents, that's just kind of their basic question. Like we did all this stuff and it's great from a convenience perspective. I think everyone loves it, but one of the things clearly was an increase. One of the promises was an increase in revenue, which I think has been realized, but to just in the grocery store, when I and my colleagues are out or, in the loop and someone says, hey, how are things going? Are we making more money on that Costco deal? Like, how would we answer that in a way that isn't a PowerPoint with tables and graphs?
Well, I mean, just
And again, I'm not putting you on the
Yeah.
spot to answer now, but I think that's something I'd love to see kind of sooner than later. Certainly as we see more things happening, Deerbergs and Target, those are all fantastic things. I think that question may come up more like, okay, we got all the stuff here now. How are we doing?
that's a great question.
Thank you.
Mr. Rose?
Honorable Mayor, Councilmember Clay, when we were examining the cost benefit of the Market at Olive project to the city, as you know, we did a fiscal impact analysis. And as a result of that information, we believed at the time that the city would receive roughly $1 million in addition to the revenues from that project. We'll need to examine, as Finance Director Cole has indicated, whether that's being realized, but that was the estimate at the time.
Mr. Smotherson?
Thank you, Mayor Crowe. Director Cole, I do have a question that I hope that you can answer here and now, and that is just to give me clarity on if the general fund had an increase of 6.4% compared to the previous quarter, FY 24, then if you could explain to me then, why would park and stormwater sales tax revenues have a slight decrease of 1.4? Because again, just if you could explain how that trickles down, because I know we have general funds, but then we also have these additional sub funds like park and stormwater. And I'm just kind of curious, especially since park and stormwater is receiving TIF funds. Now, that's one question. If you could explain how there's a decrease here, increase in the general fund. But then the other question that I do have is simply that this is the first time I've ever been aware that TIF funds were actually going into fire protection service sales tax revenues. Wasn't aware of that at all. This is the first time I've seen that. If you could explain that, please. Because I didn't know that TIF funds were being allocated in that way into this fund.
That was part of the TIF agreement, that portion of it goes to the fire sales tax.
Never heard that. Never heard that. I've heard several funds, SID, pool tax, and parks and stormwater. I've never, that I'm aware of, and this could be new to me. I mean, again, I may have missed something. So, okay. We can talk about that, but go ahead. I'll let you finish.
Yeah, so the TIF, it's broken out between the economic development resale sales tax, fire sales tax, and then the park stormwater sales tax.
Sorry. Honorable Mayor, Mayor Pro Tem Smotherson, I believe it's an issue somewhat of semantics, how we define things. So I'll let our city attorney, John Mulligan, provide an explanation to you.
Thank you, Honorable Mayor, members of the council. So under Missouri law governing TIFs, there is what they call top half and a bottom half of the sales tax. So for instance, if you have a 0.5% for parks and stormwater, a quarter would go to take care of the TIF obligations, the debt, and then the other quarter would go to the city to be used for park and stormwater purposes. So, and the same would be true, it is true for fire protection services as well. So that was created several years ago. That structure was created when council approved the TIF. Does that answer your question?
Okay. Again, there was news to me, but thank you. I appreciate the explanation. Thank you.
Mr. McMahon.
Thank you, Mayor. With the increase in ambulance fee collections, in the past, we had a big backlog of overdue bills. Is this from the overdue bills or just current collection? Because I know we updated systems, or do you have a breakdown of that?
Councilman Command, this all current collections. There's nothing from the previous. It's all current.
And if I could follow up on Councilmember Clay's question, if you were doing a but for, as we read through this, that 46% of the increase in funds was due to the TIF, you would say, but for the TIF, we wouldn't have that 46%. Is that a wrong way to say it? Because I think we're all coming to the same, I think we're all getting the same questions. I've not ever had this while I've been buying avocados, but the same idea. The question comes up at least once a week. How are we doing? And I think we all know that the project, once the Deerberg's finished out, we're pretty much pretty pleased with where we are. But it's always nice to be able to say, here's the generation. Even just judging by we know that Costco is putting the numbers out that are absolutely pretty close to being off the charts as far as how well they've been doing. But you've also got the other businesses there, whether it be First Watch or it be Chick-fil-A, that seem to just be crushing it. And so my guess is that we feel like it's out there, but we don't really have any numbers to say this is where we are. And I think it's a tough comparison for anyone to make of what the land use generates now versus what it used to, because that's quite a difference. But it's also quite a stark reality for everybody to understand that is quite a difference. I mean, really, that is a stark difference, because the businesses there, I mean, I don't know, I'm trying to think sales volume wise, the businesses that were in that whole strip, Buyers Lumber would have had some serious, probably some funds going through, but I'm not sure the sales tax revenues from everybody else in that area would have been that strong. So I think Mr. Clay's question is one that's probably good for us to have some numbers to be able to pass on to other folks. And I think Mr. Mulligan is getting ready to push his light.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. There is a TIF monitor, an attorney, tax attorney, who provides a quarterly report with revenue information. There is a 1% SID tax, and in that report, it states how much SID tax was collected during the previous quarter. So you would simply do the math on that, and that would tell you the gross taxable revenue for the entire project. So let's say the SID collected $1 million, top and bottom half total. Then your project is generating about 100 million in retail sales. The most recent report indicated some numbers. I want to check with the monitor before I publicly disclose those, but that information is available. Once Deerbergs and Target open, of course, that will be a lot higher. And then one additional comment I'd have regarding the top half and the bottom half of the taxes with respect to the economic development retail sales tax. That's 100% cities. That's not shared. So that quarter cent is all goes in the EDRST pot. So if you take 100 million or whatever that number is, 1/4% of that is 250,000. So the projections for this project are well in excess of 100 million. So you're getting on 100 million, you're getting 250,000 additional EDRST funds. That's going to be probably multiples of that when all's said and done. The hope is just on that one alone.
But I do think as Councilmember Clay, it'd be nice for us to have the point of reference of what we're doing now versus what we did then. And then maybe almost the hard part to go back to, because there probably weren't a lot of sales taxes generated on those properties.
Right, Mayor. And that information is available.
Yeah.
It was a very small number. And so the information we're getting on the SID it's on the increment.
Yep.
So that is easy for us to calculate.
Mr. Clay.
Thank you, Mayor Cronin. Very quickly, I think I use the anecdote of the firmness of avocados in schnooks, because that's how we need to deliver this. We won't have the opportunity to sit down with folks with a spreadsheet. And so I think as making this as pithy and as simple as we can, I realize it is complicated. I think is the way to go. And so what I would ask Director Cole, Attorney Mulligan, City Manager, think of a person in a grocery store when you bring this to us, and how you could frame it in a way that we could have, as to the best of our ability, a 2-minute conversation. Hey, Mayor, how's Costco going? And he goes, hey, it's going great. We had this and now it's this. I may be oversimplifying, but if we can get to that point, I think it'd be a real benefit for us communicating the power, because this is so powerful, the power of this development and what we've been able to do.
Thank you very much. Any other questions from Mr. Cole? Hearing none. Thank you, Mr. Cole. Thank you. Mr. Rose, that concludes your report?
Yes, ma'am.
We can move forward then to new bills. Who would like to introduce bill number 9563? Mr. McMahon. Madam Clerk, may we have the first reading of Bill number 9563?
Bill 9563, an ordinance fixing the compensation to be paid to city officials and employees as enumerated herein from and after January 13th, 2025, and repealing ordinance number 7360.
Thank you very much. Is there any member of council who would like to issue a report on any of the councils to which they are the liaison? Mr. Teeman.
Honorable Mayor, my fellow council members, I just want to take a minute and commend members of the Arts and Letters Commission, as well as all those people who are participated in the Returning Artist events. The noted musician Christopher Thomas was our returning artist, a U City 1960, that can't be right, 1968, 1986, I think.
88.
88, thank you so much. And I particularly was really quite taken not only by the stuff he did in the various schools, but the reception on the second. I particularly want to thank the Honorable Mayor Pro Tem for the proclamation reading, Sharonica Harden Bartley, our superintendent of schools, and the various members who participated in that. It was an amazing event. We filled the house. And it was also, I have to say, a beautiful event. There were moving, frankly, I have to say, moving speeches. And the performance by Christopher Thomas and his wife, Leica, was first class. It really was. It was extraordinary. It really was. So in short, I want to thank everybody who participated in that event and made it possible. Thank you.
Thank you. Madam Clerk, do we have any other requests to speak?
There are none.
Do we have any council comments from members of council at this time? Hearing none, I would welcome a motion to adjourn. Motion made by Mr. Teeman, seconded by Mr. McMahon. Is there discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Opposed? The ayes have it. Thank you very much for joining us this evening.